Sometimes in life we just suffer. Sometimes it's from being totally withdrawn, or so much stress that we are totally anxious, or so tired that we are totally burnt out. But our current position is not our final destination. No, indeed. There's hope. So whether it's your personal life, your career, your relationship, your business, or your job, we say there's reason to believe again. And we present from Andy's personal development, the breakout room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned for more. Hi, and welcome to Andy's Personal Development. We are currently live in the breakout room, and we have an amazing and wonderfully prepared guest to share with you on this particular episode. It is entitled Becoming the Intentional Optimist with Andrea Johnson, and we'll introduce you to her in a moment. But quickly, let's just tell you something about Andrea so you can have an understanding of the foundation that she's laid for her life and the contributions that she's making to the people that she best serves. She's a certified Maxwell leadership speaker, trainer, coach, and DISC behavioral analysis consultant. And she says, I facilitate improved communication and corporate culture in women owned or operated teams. And her passion is equipping female leaders to define a new culture by trusting their own ability to think critically, create imaginatively, and lead effectively. So, there's so much more, but I'm not the star of the moment. Andrea is. So let's welcome our guest live in the breakout room, the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Andrea Johnson, welcome.
Hey, Andy, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you here, and I'm glad that you are happy. And we appreciate you and thank you for being with us at this time. So, Andrea, tell us a bit about who Andrea Johnson is and basically focus on when you found that passion, that calling that you now undertake in life. What was that moment like for you? Can you share that experience with us, please?
Sure. I am a second career entrepreneur, and what I do is based on learning everything in my first career and then deciding I wanted to do something different. But I was in administration and management for university medical systems. I worked for two big ones here on the Atlantic coast, and I did lots of managing budgets and managing people in the academic side. And I realized that I had a lot of people coming to my office that would ask me for advice, that would come to me for a safe place to land, that would use me as a reference and see me as a mentor. And I had other people who just were there to clock in and count the number of days to retirement. And I discovered I just really didn't like managing people, right? I told my husband, I said, I just want to help people, and managing them to the status quo or making sure that we keep them until they retire doesn't feel like fulfilling work to me. So I had that going on in my career. And then at the same time, my mother had a 24, or excuse me, a 15-year battle with breast cancer. And
Oh,
so in 2017, I turned 50, and my mother lost her battle with cancer. And things happened here. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia. So some other things happened here in town. And I realized, I don't want my next 50 years to look like this. And
yeah.
so I started just really kind of doing more. I had been doing personal growth things, Andy, since I was 20.
Okay.
But, and I was always looking for ways to increase my skills or learn how to be a leader. But I hadn't really dived really deep yet. And a friend of mine that I'd known since I was in high school said, have you ever looked at the John Maxwell stuff, and he's a international leadership guru, but I didn't know anything really about his team or the way he trained, and they trained and speakers, trainers, and coaches, or the disc analysis. And so I started looking at it and realized this is an opportunity for me to help lead people and to help train people rather than to manage people. And as I got further and further into it, I've been doing it since I was certified, excuse me, in March of 2019. And I have been doing this as my own business for 3 years this month. And I just, the more I learn, the more I realize this really is a passion. And I thought that I would only work with women like me who are second career, heading into like potentially retirement. But I realized that, and I'm surprised that millennial women and Gen Z women come to me because they see me as somebody who's already like cleared the hurdles. And so it gives me, I get to pour into their lives and I get to see them accomplishing things long before I did in my life. And that gives me great, great joy to see that kind of result happening in my clients.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. We appreciate that very much and we love your story. When people hear the term intentional optimist, what do you want to come to their mind? What do you want them to be thinking about?
Well, when I was looking for a name for my business, it was
Uh
in
huh.
the aftermath of my mother's death, and I thought of
Right.
her as a very bubbly, sanguine type person, and my friends were like, "That's not a good word. Nobody knows what that means."
Yes.
And so they said, "What about something like optimism?" I mean, you see me, I'm in navy and white stripes and big yellow earrings, and so I'm a bubbly person myself, but I have a part of my dad in me is very, purposeful, and I don't do things frivolously. I think about them well and I make a choice and I move forward. But I wanted more of that hopeful, optimistic outlook. And so I started my business name with me in mind. I said, I need to be more intentional about how I live. And so part of changing into my into my business and moving forward was picking that business name and then coming up with what I decided I would call the 6 tenets of intentional optimism, because what those do is they are the attitudes and mindsets that help me live out that intention. People used to joke in the hospital or the university, they could hear me coming down the hall. And I'm only 5'1.5", so I'm not a big person. But I always walked with, I mean, I have some place to go, and they're like, "I always hear
Yeah.
you coming, clomp, clomp, clomp in your heels." But I said, "I don't wander." And yet sometimes those of us who are very intentional about things tend to be very realistic and tend to get bogged down and tend to be pessimistic, because I can tell you 5 miles down the road what's gonna happen. I mean, I can
Uh
see
huh.
it.
Okay.
And that can breed sometimes a pessimism in us. So to be called the intentional optimist is literally training myself on a daily basis and then turning it around and saying, all right, if it works for me, it can work for you if this is your thing. And that's so when I say that for people, what I want them to hear is that they have the choice to live in a way that is hopeful, that celebrates other people, that helps others flourish, and that brings grace and ease to the way they live out their values and their beliefs.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I love the philosophy and I fully support it and endorse it. It sounds wonderful. Something that we need to adapt more often in our lives. So, for the past 3 years or so, Andrea, what are some of the challenges have you seen with the clients? And I know you focus mostly on women. You talk about the millenniums and the Gen Zs, and but is there some sort of correlation between the ages in terms of the challenges that they face, or do you see a consistent pattern with regards to some of the challenges that you have to deal with and helping them to be intentionally optimistic?
Well, a lot of times we teach what we know and what we've
Yeah,
experienced.
yeah,
And for me, my lived experience was being a woman in the evangelical community in the South. And so it was hard for me being a very strong person. I have a lot of presence, even though I'm short. But I didn't live that well in my life. I kind of abdicated it. I kind of let myself be quieted. I kind of let myself be put in a box. I chose to be there in order to not make waves. I chose
Okay.
to be in those and I can't tell you, Andy, how many women are in my shoes that they've
Mm,
chosen to not be the leader. They've chosen to not speak up because
right.
they're afraid it's going to hurt their job or hurt their family or and that sounds really dramatic, but it's not. It's very real. It's a lived experience that the majority of women in this country of the United States have, I think, especially those of us who are in a more conservative, come from a more conservative background. And so I thought that it would be a lot of women like me heading into I'll be 58 next week, right? And I
Hmm.
thought it would be I would work with women like me that were ready to kind of shake their fist at the patriarchy or like stick it to the man. And it's not. It's young women who see the opportunity to take even that conditioning that they've received early on and say, I can be different. And there's a lot of millennials are just as a group, millennials tend to take things more a la carte. They're more buffet oriented in their thinking. I'm a Gen Xer, and so we took everything like hook, line, and sinker. It's like, if this is the way I'm supposed to be, I'm going to do all of it.
Yeah.
And it could be on one end of the spectrum or the other. But millennials tend to be like, I like that from you, and I like that from you, and I like this from you. And so they see an opportunity to move forward in ways that I never saw. Gen Zers, on the other hand, are like, y'all are all crazy. Why are you doing it this way? We can be ourselves because they've grown up in this, completely digital age. My
Yes.
son, my 15-year-old son is a Gen Zer, and he has friends all over the country. I'm like, well, tell me about your friends at school. Yeah, they're all right, but the ones he talks to are the ones like all over the place.
Yes.
They have this broad view of what it means to even just be in community, which opens up their view of how they lead and how they function and how they move forward. So there's a little bit of a difference in working with the younger ones than the millennials, but I find that they're both eager to learn. And I don't know what it is about me, but they see me as somebody who can pour into them. And so it's always a privilege to get to turn around and help those behind me come forward.
Yeah. I think it's two things, Andrea. One, I think it's your personality. It's very engaging. And two, you seem to have an open sense of just staying in the moment and being present without even drawing conclusions, without judging,
Mm,
and just appreciating the moment for what it is. And people gravitate to that. It kind of
mm,
resonates with people. And it doesn't matter the age limit or the disparity between the ages,
mm.
people just generally from all sectors of life graduate or gravitate to something like that. I just have a quick
Thank
comment
you.
here to show. Yeah, Andrea, keep it up. Fletcher Ellingson. Fletcher Ellingson is one of the most competent coaches that I've ever had the privilege of working with. And he's been on my show as well. And he says, way to go, Andy. Fletcher, what about Andrea, man? But yeah, I get it. And he has a thumbs up. We appreciate your comment, Fletcher. Thank you so much for your support, my friend. So, right now, I'm going to show a video to Andrea, and I want her to comment on it and give us like a color commentary. Here we go.
I just got off a call with a client and I wanted to share an aha that we both had that was just really helpful. I said, I'm going to post this. And she said, go ahead. So we just finished discussing John Maxwell's Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, and she finished the last chapter. And the last chapter is wrapping it all up. It's about personal growth. And the quote that we both were just like, this is huge. People need to know this, is literally that growth and personal growth is the only thing that guarantees that tomorrow will be better than today. Think about that. Personal growth is the only thing that guarantees that tomorrow will be better than today, because you can make choices, you can make a difference, and you have the opportunity to make all the changes you want to make. So I challenge you. It's time to grow. I have never had anybody do that.
I loved it so much. I just had to share it.
Oh, thank you.
While you were speaking about that positive thing, that growth, what came out of you in terms of your personality, your
Mm,
eyes, the cheekbones, everything. And you would notice from a coaching perspective, because we are taught to look for things like these.
mm,
It embodied the very aspect of growth,
mm.
and that impressed me. So I say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna bring it on the show and ask her to put a comment on it.
Sure. Sometimes even as coaches, especially somebody like me, who I was sharing the John Maxwell book, The 21 Laws of Leadership.
Yeah.
And some of my coaching clients, it's very structured. We actually walk through these leadership books. And so a lot of times it can be very, yeah, that's the same thing every single time, every single time. And it's new with each client. And sometimes it gets old for, if you're somebody who walks through curriculum, like teachers, I'm sure go through this every year when they're like, "Yep, same old curriculum," but to have new insights happen every single time you read it. And so I review when we're going through a chapter, I review as well because Andy, I don't stop growing. Incidentally, I was called Andy all through my childhood. So so we can be Andy squared over here.
There you go.
But for I review and I read, and something hits me new every time. And another client I was working with yesterday, we're talking about core values, and we've got one more session left. And she said, "Is there anything I'm missing before I dive into this last piece of what we're going to do?" And I said, because one of her core values is achievement. And I said, as an achiever, I want to make sure that you remember that there is no finish line here. Implementing new principles and integrating your core values, or understanding your disc profile, or just understanding that you've learned these things, that's not a destination. That's the beginning, right? That is the very beginning. It is a lifelong process. So
Hmm.
we don't achieve personal growth, we pursue personal growth.
Right.
And every time I was reminded of this myself, I was sick all summer. I think we've postponed this interview at least once. I had
Yeah.
pneumonia this summer, and it
Oh.
just it stopped me in my tracks.
Hmm.
I was shocked to see how immobilizing it was. Even
Yeah.
when I was able to get out and work in the yard or something, my brain wouldn't work. I mean, nothing worked well, and I was about 6 weeks off. And so getting back out and doing things like walking and that kind of thing, I was reminded that movement always changes your perspective. And in leadership and in personal growth, the more you grow, the higher you step. And when you step up to those new levels of awareness and understanding, and maybe even compassion for yourself and for others, when you step up to those new levels, you have a new perspective, which goes all the way back to this video. It's just showing, even though I walk my clients through that book, I get a new perspective. And it was really fun that day to have my client and I actually have the exact same. This was a big takeaway from just having a coaching session. So I think it speaks not only to personal growth and the value of it, but the value of working with coaches and the value of having someone challenge you. Because if you're like me, it's real easy to coast. So having somebody else there means that I'm going to continue to grow.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. We appreciate that so much. We love it. And I think that a deep sense of awareness helps one to realize that there's always room for growth. And it's not something that we should take lightly, something we should really pursue. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So, what then, Andrea? How do we construct in detail the three levels of awareness, like ABC? What does it look like?
Oh, I love the ABCs. For me, that the ABCs are, for y'all listening, is your assumptions, your beliefs, and your conditioning.
Right.
And if we look at it like the graphic I put out there is usually an iceberg, So like if you look at it even on my chair, it's like you got this little tip of the iceberg that we see, and that's the one that people tend to bump into the most. And those are the things that we assume. Like we walk through life and we have our own perspective, and therefore we just assume that other people have that perspective.
Yeah.
When people, and they don't, right? Because
Hmm.
you walking through life is going to be very different than me walking through life. So when other people bump up against that, then it gives us the opportunity to change our perspective and to change our assumptions, which kind of changes the makeup of that tip of that iceberg. But our assumptions, Andy, are based, and the foundation belief beneath those are our beliefs and our conditioning. And our beliefs come from the experiences we've had, what we've been taught, what we have chosen to do, the core values that we may have, or the values that have put around us. And they're changeable. Ask anybody who's changed a religion or a political party, beliefs are changeable, right? Even just looking back in history, we used to think the world was flat, and now we know it is not, right? So beliefs can change, but beneath the beliefs, and the thing that is the biggest part of an iceberg, and the biggest thing that we have to look at when we're trying to think about potentially raising the awareness, or if you want to use that language, raising that iceberg above so we can see what's there, that's our conditioning. And our conditioning can be things, everything from the day we were born, our parents, the way they raised us, the communities we were in, the schools, the churches, the travel that we did or did not do. I grew up traveling 13,000 miles away. My parents were missionaries in Korea, and that gave me a very different perspective than the people who were children of my parents' best friends in high school who grew up in Southeast Texas and never left the town. So it's very different. All those things kind of build up conditioning. And then as we age, we get out of high school, we get out of college, but certainly if we go to college, if we go away to college, we start choosing in high school and in college who we're going to spend our time with, and what communities we're going to participate in. And so conditioning is not just what other people do to us, it is all of the things that we have been immersed in all of our lives. And if we're not willing to look at that conditioning, then we will never be able to raise the awareness of what we need to change. And sometimes it's really hard to look at, but once we start doing the work, you realize, oh my goodness, I had this very small view of things up here above the water.
Yeah.
And when you start chipping away at some of that, when you're willing to go beneath the surface and chip away at the beliefs and conditioning that you may have, then it just lightens the load, and so much more comes up above the water, and so much more is available to you to do something differently with.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. I love that explanation. It's very detailed and quite succinct to the realities of what we face with regards to life's challenges. Wonderful. We have, from my training, I've been told that personal development goes basically in three areas. There's the motivational aspect, there's the inspirational aspect, and then there's the transformational aspect. Why did you choose transformation and not the other two?
I was a cheerleader in high school,
Yeah.
so I'm really good at motivating people.
Uh huh.
But I will say this, I can cheer you on, so I may not be good at motivating people. So I guess the best answer is I played to my strengths. We're just gonna give
Okay.
the too long didn't read. I played to my strengths because even when I said I don't like managing people, if I give you a good answer, or I present an option to you and you choose to not take it, I can't do anything else, right? It's like, so there's only so much I can do. There's things that I do in my business that are motivational and inspirational. My podcast is inspirational. The videos I put out there are inspirational. People tell me I'm inspirational. I take that all as a wonderful blessing and a compliment.
Yeah.
But the reality for me is I had to go through a very difficult transformation in order to become who I am, to show up this way today.
Mm, yes.
And a good coach is somebody that will help you get from point A to point B a lot faster than you could on your own. We just finished
Yeah.
watching the Olympics. Coaches out there everywhere know what it takes it's a hard job, right? But for people who want to get from point A to point B faster with fewer heartaches, and some heartaches are just going to be there, but I went through all of it. I mean, I had mentors, but I went through so much of it on my own. And if I had even had one inkling that I could do it differently and do it more quickly and do it more efficiently with tips and tricks and understanding of myself that I just didn't have and couldn't see, I would love to have grabbed that. But this is my journey, right? And so because I feel that way and believe that, as a coach, taking one life and helping them transfer one area of that life into something else is a very high calling for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And specifically in the area of leadership and women's leadership.
Okay, great. Love it. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. So, we have been listening, Andrea Johnson, a transformational leadership coach, and this episode is entitled Becoming the Intentional Optimist. And she's been giving us some really wonderful, valuable nuggets. And I hope that it has made an inspirational touch that would lead to transformation in your life thus far. So we're going to take a quick break for about 27 seconds or so. Our friends at fineradioguest.com, you know what they do. They help us look really good on our profiles all over the social media platforms. Then usually give you a bump sometimes and make sure that when you put your stuff out there, you're recognized for what you do, you make that impact, and people knock on your door for interviews and for podcast appearances. FindRadioGuests.com. Here we go. FindRadioGuests.com, the place to click to find guests to interview for free. And if you're a radio show booker, podcaster, talk show host, or television producer, then this is the place to get podcasts and radio interviews or promote your books and products as a guest expert sponsor. FindRadioGuests.com. Check it out. Yeah, thank you, FindRadioGuests.com. Wonderful people over there. Amazing insights with regards to personal promotions for authors, writers, coaches, artists, you name it. So,
I'm gonna have to check them
Andrea,
out, Andy. I need
yeah,
I
you
need to
can
check
do
them
that.
out.
You can do that. You can do that.
Just wrote
You
it
can do
down.
that. I'm
Took
sure they'd
notes.
be glad to have you. Wonderful. I love that. Great. So, Andrea, in terms of critical thinking, what is the real aspect of critical thinking that can lead us to optimistic thinking?
So when I say critical thinking, I basically mean thinking for yourself. I
All
mean,
right.
taking an idea or anything that comes in, because how many times, I don't know the statistics. I used to know them. I used to quote them, but like the number of messages we get every day. I mean, you saw my
Yeah.
face. I kind of went, ugh. It's just there's so much. It comes in on social media. It comes in through the people we associate with. And as somebody who didn't do this critical thinking very intently or purposefully throughout a good 30 years of my life, what we do is, like me, we abdicate the decisions. We allow someone else who knows better than us to tell us what to think, to tell us this is how you should look. And there's so much out there too. I mean, it's like, it's not like we read a paper and get the news anymore. It's the news is constantly hitting. I open my phone and the first thing is like, here's the news stories, like go away. But it's this constant, you don't know all the details behind all of this. So therefore we're going to tell you how to think. And some people are really good at saying, no, thank you. But people like me who, and like many other people who want to fit in and want um, to get the right answer and make sure that we're on the right side of whatever it is, we tend to allow other people to make those decisions for us. And in our defense, we're taught this in school, right? Here's the information. I don't want to discuss it. Regurgitate it back to me for a test. I mean, that's a very simple version. None of my son's teachers are like this right now. My son's a 10th grader in high school and his teachers are amazing. But a lot of times that's what we have. And even in a lot of times in our jobs, we're told this is the viewpoint we're taking on this and this is what you need to do. And what I'm proposing is we have the ability and I think responsibility to think for ourselves, to actually take the information that comes in and run that through a filter or two. And we kind of do that anyway, but to figure out, even just figuring out what those are, peeling back the layers, asking, why is this an important issue? Or what makes this an important issue to me? Or why do I not feel moved by this when other people do? And I think being willing to be curious about it will give us that ability to kind of peel back all the layers and look at where we want to land on an
Yeah.
issue. And
Yeah.
in our country right now, especially in the United States, it's kind of important to be able to do that because everything is like everywhere. So I just think it's important, and I didn't do it for so long, and so I really, really love to foster that in other people.
Wow. Inspirational. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. I'm looking at the challenges that I personally have engaged in with people that I coach. And one of the things that I have discovered is that it's a bit challenging for people to switch from being a team player or a team follower or a team member to the role of being a leader, even when their current situation requires that they switch or
Mm.
transition into the role of leadership. Is that something that you have to deal with the people that you work with, the woman example, for example, who are in a situation for so long, maybe 20 odd years or
Mhm.
less, that they have been just a team member
Mhm.
or follower, but now it is necessary for them to change or transition into the role of a leader,
Mhm.
and it's quite challenging. How do you help them do that?
Yeah, I think women especially are hit with that.
Yeah.
And in the university system, I just had a conversation with another woman that there's all kinds of industries that do this. If you're talking business, if you're talking job related and work related, a lot of times we'll take our best performer and put them in the
Uh-huh.
management role, and they don't get training for that. They don't know what to do with them, right?
Yeah.
So there's a piece of that that is training involved. And so one of my clients that the video that you shared was with a client who had been made a team leader and needed to have some coaching on how to be a leader because we're not taught how to do that in our work environment. And but most of the time, like when I talk on my podcast or when I work with individual clients, because that was in a corporate situation where I was doing more consulting style work where I worked with
Mhm.
several people.
Yeah.
And when you do that, then and what I did is I trained all the middle management people, and it was great because then all the teams kind of functioned better. And that was a real privilege to be able to do that. But when I'm working with someone who, individuals who, like in my private work, where they may have been doing this forever. One of the things I make sure they understand is that we are each a leader. The first person we lead is ourselves.
Yeah.
If you cannot lead yourself, you got no business leading somebody else. And so
Uh-huh.
part of it is just changing their paradigm to help them understand that they're already a leader. It's just, are you going to do it well or are you going to do it poorly? And even somebody who sits back and watches the team do things and is very quiet on a team, that can be a leadership role depending on what you do. Some people will sit back and like move things around very quietly like a chess player. And so I think we the biggest thing is to change the mindset that everyone's a leader and somebody's watching you. And if it's your kids or your boss or your teammates and I personally don't advocate promoting someone from a team player to the leader. It's very difficult in that kind of situation for everybody to change, but it happens all the time. And so the best thing to do is to learn how to change the mindset so that you can learn how to be a good leader and not a poor one.
Ah, I love it. Wonderful. So we have two thumbs up, two likes. So people are connecting, Andrea. That's wonderful.
Yay.
I'm gonna hit you with another video. Here we go.
Small, consistent steps taken over time yield big results. Did you hear that? Small steps. They don't have to be big steps. This is how we teach kids to brush their teeth. This is how we start an exercise routine, even if it's just 5 minutes a day. The other piece of that is consistency. You have to keep doing it. Do you remember when you learned how to do exponents and you said 2 times 2 equals 4, 4 times 4 equals 16? That's exponential growth. That's how we do small, consistent steps equal really big changes. What small, consistent steps are you taking? What small, consistent steps do you need to take? Personally, I'm doing the small steps of smaller exercise and building on that each week and making sure that I eat well. Like and follow for more inspiration, daily encouragement, and tips and tricks on how to be an intentional optimist.
Yay!
That was after I dropped my son off at school one day.
Uh-huh. Wow. I love it. I love it. Small steps. How important is that incrementally?
Sure. I mean, and this is a leadership and a personal growth principle. It's not unique to me. John Maxwell says it all the time. I'm sure you've probably used that principle with your clients. But for me to remind people, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed, and I get overwhelmed, right? I get overwhelmed with all of the things, all of the marketing that I need to do on top of coaching, the interviews, and it's just like making sure that I have all of that together. I have to do small things. I'm putting together a big conference for October, and each day I'm trying to do a sponsor request letter, and we need to recognize too that those small steps, a lot of them, they take our energy. But if we try to do too much, then we don't hit this we don't use up our battery too fast, right? We like make the battery last longer, or we don't drain it too far so that we don't have the energy to do other things. And like I said earlier, every step you take up gives you a better perspective. So with each small step that you take, that gives you more awareness, more perspective. And I was kind of sitting there, I was like, I don't even remember what I said at the end of this video. And what's funny is I just shared that I had pneumonia this summer.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
stopped my exercise, and so
Wow.
I was doing walking and strength training, and I've gotten back up to 3 miles walking and got under 16-minute miles this morning. But
Yeah.
I've just for strength training, I've just started because I had a health coach for a while, and one of the things she started me out with was just do push-ups on the counter every time you walk through the kitchen. That's
Yeah.
gonna be something that works your upper body. I'm like, "Oh, that's right." So I've started that, and now I'm sore. But it's small steps. It's not, "Okay, today I walked 3 miles and I'm gonna do a 10-minute workout on Apple." I mean, it's making sure that you do just a little something. And, I've grown a lot just by doing those things. Like, for instance, pitching podcasts every morning. Asking people to have me on their show is, for some reason, scary to me. So I made myself do 3 every day. So just 3. That's all.
Ooh.
Just 3, and I
Wow.
do it before I even go outside to do my walk. It's like you don't get to do anything until you do those 3 pitches. And doing little things like that. There's a book out there called Eat That Frog, and I think it's based on, I forget the guy who wrote it, but you can look it up. But it's based on a Mark Twain quote, I think, talking about, if you have to eat a frog every day, you might as well eat it first. And so it's not just small and consistent, it's do it first. It's like eat the vegetables first, then the candy. And it's something that comes with maturity. It's something that comes with us taking ownership and responsibility. And those are the things that help me.
Refreshing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. So, in terms of the clientele that you deal with uh, every day, I suppose, when you look at some of the mindset challenges that they have, is culture a big part, or is it a combination of culture? Sometimes it's socio-economic disposition. Sometimes it's growing up in a household where one person was the dominant factor, the dominant figure, and they grow with that all the days of their lives. And there are some people who have so much baggages, so many unsolved things from the past that there's a lot of insecurity, limiting beliefs, doubts. How do you train someone to get to the point? I shouldn't say train, but lead rather. This is not therapy, this is coaching. Lead them, guide them to a place where that mindset begins to change, and the level of intentionality with the optimistic aspect of it starts to become something available to them. They begin to see it and realize, yes, I can change, I can do better.
Mm. Yeah, I'm going to be straight up honest with you. The people
Yeah.
who aren't ready to do that don't usually
Uh,
work with me.
okay.
And just be and on a private basis. I have
Yeah.
had 2 clients in a corporate contract that, 2 different I've done this in 2 different, I've done different corporate contracts, and I've had 2 different clients that were not ready. They went
Hmm.
through the motions, they were not willing to be led, they checked off the boxes and did the coaching, but they just didn't want to do it. So, when someone's interested in learning, the first thing I do is I give them some tools that are very objective. We don't
Okay.
start with subjective stuff. So when I say I'm a DISC behavioral analysis consultant, that is a personality type and communication and leadership type analysis.
Yeah.
And it's a really simple 10-minute assessment that gives you very clear, it's like a 32-page report with very detailed information on kind of how you communicate, how you show up, and what your value is to the team. So it's something that's very documentable. I don't start with the squishy stuff. I don't start with, because you're right, we're not therapists.
Yes.
And I have had several clients that not only talk to me, but I also have a therapist, because coaches help us go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Therapists help us understand how we got there, you know?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so for anybody listening, if you need to know whether you need a coach or a therapist, you may need both, and you never know which order you need them in. But I have had people where if I start them with something concrete that they can actually see, because that's something that when you look at a disc report, you can see exactly what it is. Then you actually work with them on that to start changing their behavior, and it has a personal growth plan at the back of this report to help them decide how they want to change their behavior, because behavior is very documentable, right? It's very clear to see, it's very easy to see, and it, quite frankly, we have what is it called? Cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it's like this is something that is got a lot of gravitas in the psychotherapy area and the psychology area. So when we help people see that they can actually make some changes to their behavior, all of a sudden, like I said, movement creates opportunities, perspective change. And so when they see that they can make changes in their behavior, all of a sudden, that's what starts opening up the doors for them to see, oh, and I've literally had women look at me and say, "Oh my goodness, this totally explains why I didn't get along with my sister the whole time I grew up. I need to fix that." And that's real change that they can do outside of coaching, or at least they're motivated to do it. And to see that there is hope for situations, instead of not talking to her sister, she's now getting a good relationship going with her. So I think sometimes we just need to start, like with children, they learn everything very they don't do the abstract first, they do the concrete first, and then they
Yeah.
do the abstract. So I think working with people, starting with the concrete, is a great place to start, and that's sometimes why I work with a book too, because it's objective, it's outside, it's not scary,
It
it's
helps.
challenging them, but yeah,
Yeah.
it kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
puts them in a mindset that this is a safe place and this is okay to do that.
Okay. Wonderful. Wow. So I'm just gonna give a break, and we're gonna take in a small commercial from my friend Phoebe Trotman, the author of Never Quit on a Bad Day. And she's just helping out some stuff with our sister podcast entitled Breaking Out of Depression. We just have a few minutes to go. We'll be right back with Andrea Johnson live in the breakout room.
Hi, friends. Phoebe Trotman here. I wanted to just thank Andy, Charles, and the team for what they're doing with their broadcast. One of the things that stood out to me is that they truly care. They are there every single Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, sharing what they have gone through, their experiences. They have guests who have gone through real challenges, and those guests are sharing what they've done to push through those challenges. But one of the things the reason I want to encourage you to tune in is because it helps you realize you're not alone. There is a community of people who care. There are people out there who've gone through challenges, and they're sharing what they did to push through. And so it's a show of hope. It's a show of encouragement. It's also a show where you can learn. You can learn a tip or two to help you along your journey. So I encourage you, again, tune in every single Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. They have a great lineup of guests. They themselves, they share their experiences, and I know it will help you through your journey. So I wanted to wish you continued success, good health, and many blessings in 2024 and beyond.
Thank you, Phoebe, my friend and colleague. And we have live with us in the breakout room Andrea Johnson, this episode entitled Becoming the Intentional Optimist. Andrea, we're just about running out of time, so I want to give you the opportunity to share. And let me see if I can put up on the screen. Yeah, there you go. Tell them how they can make contact with you, and you can respond which one is the most effective and efficient way so that they can get your core competencies and your services.
Sure. I am the intentional optimist. So I actually own that website,
Wonderful.
theintentionaloptimist.com.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I just got trademarked. And so that's exciting. But you can find everything there. There's links to my podcast, my blog, all of my social media. And if you're a LinkedIn user, I am on LinkedIn. Please connect with me. And if you DM me through LinkedIn or Instagram, where I'm also the intentional optimist, if you DM me and tell me that you heard me here on Andy's show, I will know that you are not spam and I will respond back to you because I'm a solopreneur. So I do all of that myself. But that's the
All
best
right.
way to be in touch with me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andrea. We appreciate that. We appreciate you. We thank you so much for being on the show. There you have it, folks. Andrea Johnson, the intentional optimist, and she owns it. So we thank you for your continued commitment and your support. We thank our friend Fletcher Ellinson, our fineradioguest.com, and of course our friend Phoebe Trotman, the author of Never Quit on a Bad Day. Remember our three watchwords: health, happiness, and prosperity. So until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development together with our guest Andrea Johnson saying so long, Godspeed, God bless, Shalom. Namaste, folks. Bye for now.